All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. It's a packed room. So today, what I'm going to talk about is Android on television. And I don't know how many of you have actually ever been on television. There's a few. Great. I mean, people do some really amazing stuff to get on television. And as, I don't know, who knows Jeff Foxworthy? My favorite guys. It's not the Southern crowd here. As he said, you might be a redneck if you've been on TV more than 5 times describing the sound of a tornado going over your neighbor's barn. Great. So fortunately, you guys don't have to describe the sound of a tornado to get on national television. You're developers. You have much better ways to get on television. So let's see how we can get your apps on television. So most people, when they hear about Android, what they think about is phones. And I don't know if anybody here has developed apps for phones before we called them smartphones back in the days? Yeah, you remember. That was not a fun time. You had like a lot of different operating systems. You had different programming languages. You had different app stores. I mean, just the hassle. If you had a tic-tac-toe game and you wanted to create a game that runs across all the different OEMs and all the different carriers, it was a nightmare. You had to write it in Java. You had to write it in Symbian. You had to make deals with all the different partners. And believe it or not, it's the same way still for set-top boxes. So if any of you wants to develop an app today that runs on TVs and you target conventional set-top boxes, there's a lot of different frameworks. There's a lot of different programming languages. It's really difficult to get an app out that just runs on everybody's television in the living room. And smart TVs were really a big thing. This year, if you have been at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, last year everybody was talking about 3D. This year, it's like every manufacturer you walk into their booth, they all talk about their smart television and how they are smart TVs now. So smart TVs are really coming. And I don't know how many of you actually watch television, but I just want to remind you, TV is this thing in the living room. I know a lot of you have a TV on the desk. I mean, on my desk, I have like 4 or 5 TVs. One of my guys from Canada, it's his tanning booth. That's crispy for you. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, normal people who don't come to Google I/O, they watch television 5 hours a day. And that's a lot of TV watched. And on the flip side, they don't watch television for 19 hours a day. So there's still a lot of time you can fill with intelligent apps. So the goal is to just don't turn the TV off anymore. So the good news is we're really very successful in making Android scale from very small screens, from anywhere from like 2-inch or 3-inch phones over tablets all the way to the biggest screen in the house. So we have launched Google TV 2 years ago with an open app ecosystem, and we've added a lot of new devices over the last 2 years. And it really gives developers a platform to create Android applications that run on different manufacturer TVs around the world, and it's easy to distribute through the Google Play Store. So I assume you're all developers. You know how to create apps. That is the easiest way for you to get your apps onto the television. Just want to give you a couple highlights of the accomplishments. You probably know this guy here. So Google TV, I mean, first of all, Android is really big in Korea. And Google TV is very big in Korea as well. So as a developer, keep that audience in mind. We have a deal with I think it's the largest Korean cable operator. It's LG U+. And every LG U+ cable box rolled out has the Google TV Android framework on it. So there's a lot of new devices coming online. And around the world, we also have launched a lot of retail devices together with our partners. So here is just a very small sampling. I couldn't really fit all of them onto the slides. But on the 3rd floor, you can have a look at the LG televisions. So we have now 2 generations of LG televisions, which integrate the Android Google TV stack. We have what we call buddy boxes. You connect them to your existing TVs to turn them into smart Android TVs. And so we have launched a series of partners with ARM chipsets. So we have Sony, we have Vizio, we have Hisense. We have over 10 manufacturers worldwide who are currently building Android devices with Google TV. So how do you create apps, and how do you distribute them? Let me recap a little bit. When we talk about TV apps, we're really looking for applications that are optimized for the living room experience. A lot of people think about, how can I bring my existing mobile app to TV? And it's really about the user experience, how you make the user interface intuitive to be used on a TV. So this is what a great app looks like. For example, from Redbox Verizon, it's video on demand. Everybody likes video on their television. So this gives them a great way to distribute high-quality video to Google TV users. And they actually started with their tablet application, and they were already very close to a TV app. They just added some support for remote controls. And I'll explain a little bit about this more later. So the first good news for everyone is sometimes I talk with people who think that they need a special SDK for developing for television. The good news is you really don't need anything special or different. You can use the standard Android SDK, and you can just download the Android Eclipse plugins, and you can get started developing for Google TV today. There is a little bit confusion. There is an SDK add-on that's currently in the Android SDK servers. It's really just an emulator, but I would recommend. The television is such a different experience. The television is very different use case compared to your mobile phone or your tablet. You should really experience the hardware and have the hardware in your living room and use it. That's the best way to really figure out how people interact with your app. So if you are serious about developing for television, by all means, have the hardware that you develop on and get a small set-top box or a small buddy box. It's actually the cheapest Android device you can buy out there. It's much less money than you would have to spend on a telephone. So if everything is just Android, why am I actually up here on stage? What are we talking about? Well, it's the Android SDK, but there is a small difference between a phone and a TV. And you may remember the remote control of your TV is sort of the most important thing in the living room. When you lose your remote control, you basically have broken your TV. I remember when I was growing up, my parents didn't have a remote. I usually had to get off the couch and walk across the room and change channels. So fortunately, we've had remotes for TVs for a very long time, and they have come a very long way. But they're still different from actually touching the screen. And it's subtle things in the user experience that you really have to try out for your app. The good news is, if you remember some of the early Android devices, so this is the original Motorola Droid, they already had a D-pad. So Android has had support for D-pad since, I think it was version 2, Eclair. And there has always been ways to implement focusable elements and D-pad focus in Android. It's just something that a lot of developers, when they develop for tablets or touch devices, they don't spend a lot of time testing and optimizing. So if you develop for TV, keep in mind the remote control is really the primary input mechanism for your users. Now that you've developed an app, how do you make sure it actually shows up in the Play Store? And there is a lot of sometimes frustration where people develop an app that they have tested and they have sideloaded on their television and it works. And then they upload it to Play Store and it doesn't show up on Play Store. So what you have to keep in mind is, by default, the Android Play Store assumes that your application requires a touch screen, simply because most Android devices up to today have already touch screens. So you have to, as a developer, you know about features and manifests. So you have to add a very simple tag to your manifest to declare that you have tested your app without a touch screen and your app is ready to run on a device that does not have a touch screen. And it's a simple manifest tag. You just declare the feature Android hardware touchscreen is not required. And if you do that, your app will show up in the Play Store, and it will show up when somebody goes in from a Google TV. If you don't want to mess with the XML, it's very simple. In the editor, in the manifest editor, you can just select the touchscreen property and set it to false. You can also create applications that run on touch and no-touch devices. So I just want to highlight this. If you declare that you do not need a touch screen, that means you will still work on a touchscreen device. So if you want to create different layouts, for example, you have a gesture-based, swipe-based layout for your application when it runs on a touch screen, then you can have a simplified and maybe DPAD navigable UI for non-touchscreen devices. And Android gives you mechanisms to declare layout files based on different device capabilities. And one of them is the touchscreen property. So you can declare no-touch layout. So here is an example. You guys have all used the I/O scheduler app all week long. What we've done is, just for testing, we loaded it onto a Google TV. And you can actually sideload it to a Google TV, and it works reasonably well. This is because the guys who wrote the I/O scheduler app took all the necessary Android best practices to heart, and they designed the application to scale to all different screen sizes. And so it scales not only from a phone to a tablet, it also scales all the way to a television size. So this is an example of an app that runs really on all Android devices out there. So let's look at some of the basics. So here is a user interface. You can actually see this application being demoed in our sandbox upstairs on the 3rd floor. This is a music app. It's by TuneIn. They've worked with me over the last couple of months to create a really amazing experience on our new Google TV devices. And so this is what their main, I want to call it the hero screen, looks like. This is cover art for all the different artists you can listen to. And effectively, if you look at it from a developer's point of view, there is a number of focusable elements on the screen. If this was a touch screen, the interface was very simple. People would just randomly touch things on the screen. Now let's look when you use this with a D-pad. Let's assume the focus is on this blue rectangle element, and the user presses the D-pad down key. So the question is, what should happen? Well, normal users would expect that the focus just goes one row down and highlights this element. Sometimes, when you didn't test that, depending on how you defined the layouts, how you boxed the XML layouts inside of each other, is it horizontal list views, is it gallery views, and so on, you may sometimes end up with the focus jumping across the screen to the first element in the next row down. Or sometimes the focus may just go to the next element down, which literally is all the way off to the side. So those are not good user experiences, and Android has very simple mechanisms for you to declare what is the proper and what is the expected behavior. So you can, this is, again, standard Android APIs. You can use Android next focus down, next focus left, right, and so on, to explicitly declare which elements should get focus for key down, for key left, key right. A lot of developers, when you just develop for touchscreen devices, don't necessarily test this or don't necessarily think about adding this. And so the Android default focus handling, it works most of the time. But if you want to have a very high quality application, you should at least test it. And whenever Android default focus handling does not do what you want it to do, you can explicitly override the defaults and you can declare it in your files. Needless to say, things like swipe gestures, they theoretically work on TV, but they're very hard to discover. and they're sometimes not very user-friendly to use. So you may want to replace those with either additional elements on the screen for next or previous screen, or you can also just simplify your UI. Most of the time, people try to put too many things on a single screen, and just because you have 60 inches or 80 inches of TV screen doesn't mean you can put a whole lot more content on it than you would put on a phone. People sit much further back from a TV screen as well. Another frequently encountered problem that I would like to highlight to you. So if you create an application that uses the network, I know a lot of developers, they check for the Wi-Fi network being enabled on a phone and make decisions if, for example, high-quality video streaming is available only on Wi-Fi. It's not available when you're on a data network. So if you only check for Wi-Fi, you will see that on Google TV, where we also have an Ethernet connector, you will get an error message that says, oh, there is no network available. So you have to make sure to check Connectivity Manager, not only type Wi-Fi, but also type Ethernet. I forgot to put them on the slides. That slipped. OK, that slipped to the next line. So there is a Connectivity Manager .type Ethernet. So you want to check that. So OK, how do we get our apps into the Play Store? So this is just a screenshot of the current Play Store on Google TV. And as I said earlier, I frequently see people posting about, I uploaded my app to Google Play. I can't see it in the Play Store. What's going on? Is Google filtering the apps for television, or how can I upload my app for television? And as I explained earlier, it's filtering based on features. So you are familiar with the Android features in the manifest file. If your application requires, for example, a GPS in order to work, well, Google TV does not have a GPS, so it would not show up. If you require things like a camera, again, your app would not show up. So make sure you know which features your application requires and compare them with the available features for Google TV. The easiest way for you as a developer to see this, there is a tool that people frequently don't know about, so I want to highlight. It's the Android Application Packaging Tool, or AAPT. And you can use that tool, simply say AAPT dump badging, and then your APK, and it will parse your manifest, and it will find default features that your application uses that maybe you haven't known. So one example is, if, for example, your application asks for the camera permission, we automatically assume that it also wants the camera feature. So once you have verified, you can upload to Play Store. Please include a 16:9 feature graphic. Include a real email address. Sometimes I go through the Play Store, I see people uploading cool apps, but then I send out an email to their email address and they never answer. Then I can't give you feedback. And let us know on our Google Plus page. Literally, me and my team, we're always looking for the next great application that we can highlight on our Google Play Store, and we just want to know about it. So let us know on Google Plus or any of the forums. It would be nice to find your application and really give you some featuring when your application meets all the criteria. So this is how you do basic applications for Google TV. Now let's see what's new and how do you really create awesome apps. So you may have already seen the news that we posted, I think, 2 days ago. So as of now, we are really bringing actively Android Jelly Bean to Google TV. I know developers have been asking about this for a long time, and it's finally here. You can see the Android Jelly Bean prototype TVs upstairs on the 3rd floor. We have several new apps that we're showing that run on Jelly Bean now. And let's see what this really means for developers. So the first advance is really the API level. So we went from Android Honeycomb, API level 13, to Android Jelly Bean, API level 17. So we have now fully caught up with the rest of the Android ecosystem. And as a developer, you have the same platform across all devices now. We still have the same high-quality media delivery APIs. I will talk about this in just a second. But we kept all the different media codecs and all the streaming technologies that you're already familiar with if you have developed applications for Google TV earlier. We have updated the Chrome browser. So we updated the Chrome browser from Chrome 11 to be on par with the Google Android Chrome browser that you know from your tablets and from your mobiles. And right now it's running Chrome 28, and we also have the encrypted media extensions, and we have the media streaming extensions. I'll explain more about this in a second as well. And we've gotten a lot of requests, and I'm really excited to tell you we now have NDK for Google TV. This will hopefully open up a lot of really cool apps. So here is one example of an application that now runs on Google TV. And I brought a quick video clip. And this is running on our Google TV in the office. And we worked with Gameloft. And it's really beautiful to see this on a 1080p screen. So when the Google TV update rolls out, you will have access to a lot of new applications, a lot of cool applications. So this is just your standard Asphalt 7 game as you know it from all your other Android devices as well. So what else have we done? So it's not just standard Android Jelly Bean. We have a couple more APIs that we think are really useful for people who create high-quality applications for the television. So I just want to highlight a few of the APIs. There will be more. We will roll out documentation over the next couple of months. But of course, we have updated the Android API level, as I said, the Media Player, Chrome, and so on. So let's see Android APIs. So a few developers who have created apps for the current generation Google TV have noticed that with the update to Jelly Bean, some of the fundamental Android permissions, for example, have changed. So Android introduced the additional permissions to, for example, access your APN settings. So we also have a new version of the Google TV specific API library. So if you have an app that runs on Google TV Honeycomb and you want to bring it to Google TV Jelly Bean, pay attention to some of the differences in the Android platform. We have skipped from 13 to 17, so it was a big jump. And we've also updated the TV libraries. So when you include the TV library, what do you get? You get, for example, an improved version of the Media Player. So you're hopefully familiar with the Android Media Player. It allows you to play back a lot of different streaming formats and a lot of different video formats. We have extended the standard Android Media Player, and we have added support, for example, for adaptive bitrate playing. So you can play back adaptive bitrate streams, which on a TV is really, I think it's one of the core features for TV. For mobile phones, people try to always compress the video stream as small as possible. Playing back a low-resolution video clip on a 60-inch TV really looks very not good. So if you have higher bandwidth and people have 10, 20 megabits to their living room, try to deliver Blu-ray quality or as high quality media as possible. So with adaptive bitrate streaming, you can do that. You can also set a minimum bitrate. Sometimes it's better to just show the user no video at all instead of a pixeled 100 to 200 pixel video. We introduced what we call the low latency mode. So normal video streaming, it builds up a buffer in memory first for the first 5 or 10 seconds, and then it starts playback. With low latency mode, we start playback immediately. And this lets you do things like cloud gaming. We are showing upstairs a sample cloud game. It's from Ubitus. And they can play back video streams and send controller input back to the backend in real time. We also have closed captioning support. So as you may be familiar, if you're in the TV space, it's very important to enable closed captioning for your viewers. And we also have quality of service. What this means is it's an API that allows you to, in your application, monitor the streaming quality at any given time. So if you are a high-quality video-on-demand provider, you want to make sure you have analytics in your app to get information, what bitrate people can stream, how many dropped frames there are, and so on. So with the quality of service APIs, you can do that. Your app can, at any given time, monitor the status of the video stream. So TV-specific APIs, we think for television it's very important to support a large number of streaming protocols. We know you have existing backends, and it's always a very high investment for somebody who has video backends and has encoded a large number of videos. They don't really want to re-encode to a new format. So we make sure we support a wide range of different streaming protocols and media encodings. We also support virtually all industry-leading DRM solutions. We know users want the latest and greatest content on their television. We get a lot of requests from users who want to have streaming video content of all their favorite shows and all their favorite channels. With Google TV, we have a trusted video path. So if you are a content owner and you have all those video assets, you can feel secure that when you distribute them to a Google TV, they will be DRM protected by our DRM trusted video path. We support Widevine and PlayReady formats. So if you have existing backends, you can just use those backends. We also support now, with the new Chrome browser, we support HTML5 encrypted media extensions. So if you choose to have a HTML application and you play back your video streams through your Chrome browser, you can now also, with the encrypted media extensions, you can use DRM in the Chrome browser. That opens up a whole new set of applications for browsers. So we also have ways to integrate with your in-living room devices. And we will publish APIs for developers to create what we call media devices. Just imagine it like a driver for your other devices in the living room. You may have already DVR devices that currently Google TV does not fully integrate with. If you as a developer want to create drivers for those devices, we will give you APIs so that those drivers can be distributed as Android APKs and just plug into the Google TV. And another exciting technology, it's not directly related to our team here, but the YouTube team has released Android APIs for streaming YouTube videos directly inside of your Android applications. And if you're interested in this, there's actually a code lab right after this. It's by my colleague, Kurzke. So you can look for the YouTube streaming code lab. He explains how to use the YouTube APIs to embed YouTube videos directly in your Android application. And that means you don't have to launch the YouTube player to play back your app and effectively lose control of the user experience. You can embed it directly in your application. And we've worked with some of the partners, and they have created some really amazing applications that provide a customized user experience for YouTube content. So let's look at the Chrome enhancements in a little bit more detail. So we have upgraded to the latest version of Chrome, and it's the same Chrome browser that is available for all other Android devices. So for developers, this should be a very familiar platform. We have also introduced what we call a full screen mode. When people watch or interact with content on the TV, they really want to have edge-to-edge content. They don't want a browser status bar or any of the Chrome, in quotes, around their application. So we have this Chromeless full screen mode. As I mentioned earlier, we support the encrypted media extensions. So that means you can play back high quality, secure content using our trusted video path. And the media extension is actually an interesting use case. So a lot of people have custom streaming solutions, especially if you deliver a lot of high-quality video. You want to have control over your streaming experience. And we allow you to customize the network protocol streaming. And when you play back a media from the browser, it will actually call back into Android, and you can implement an entire protocol handler on the Android level. So one example, what this opens up, and this is really just to inspire you to create similar amazing experiences. We have worked with Netflix, and they have brought their HTML5 experience over to Google TV. And this looks just like Netflix running on any other living room device. And that's exactly the point. For Netflix, it was very easy to take their existing HTML-based application and run it on our Google TV device. So what we've talked about is how to bring basic Android applications to TV. And then we've talked about how to bring your TV-optimized applications to TV. So hopefully, you will be able to create some really amazing TV experiences, and you will be able to bring your application onto TV. So I'm really looking forward to a lot of new apps, and looking forward to your apps on TV. So with that, you can ask my colleague, Andrew. He's actually in charge of the engineering effort for this. And if you have any questions, we're taking questions on stage. Thank you very much. Okay. So there's microphones in the aisle. Feel free to ask questions there.
Hi.
Yes.
Sasha Goldamin, Sync Media. How do you distribute media streaming extensions on a Google TV platform?
Your question is about Android API or Web API? That we have two APIs, both native and web.
But I understand that you can deploy your application, but it's not application, right? How you publish it?
You're talking about Android APIs.
So I think the question is, if you create an application that uses encrypted media extensions, how do you bring those media extensions with your application?
Yes, exactly. So if you create a web app which uses a video source extension or encrypted video extension, that will be a web page, basically. So people, if user knows the URL, they can directly go to the web page. That's one way, but it's difficult to discover. Second way is you can create a very simple Android application, which is just an icon or shortcut, right? And then you can upload it to market. And then once user download it and install the shortcut app, it's going to be placed on the all apps panel. And user can actually even move there to the bottom section to highlight. And when user clicks it, it is an Android application, but it can actually send a URL intent, which will be grabbed by Chrome browser and then direct user to your web app.
Okay, thank you.
Would you consider bringing Google TV to the Nexus Q?
We don't have a Nexus. I mean, Nexus Q was kind of withdrawn last year, so I don't really have a comment to make for that at this time.
I'll keep using it as a doorstop.
Okay, we have another question here.
Yeah, I'm delighted to see that you're moving up to Jelly Bean. On the other hand, I'd really like to see what the distribution in the marketplace looks like and what your predictions are for what it will look like over the next year.
So I think we have a slide earlier in the presentation. We have device partners planning on rolling out many type of devices, which comes up with the Google TV version 4 this year.
What do I actually have to design for right now, though?
Design your app?
Yeah. Honeycomb,
right now. So this summer, we will have a V4 device available in the market, including the updates to the existing V3 devices. So once you got a V4 device access from the market, you can use it. But if you have a serious plan to develop an app, please contact Christian. We can actually sign up some evaluation agreement and give you a development device.
Okay, thank you.
We want to make sure that the applications are ready when the devices get updated. And as Andrew said, we work very closely with our hardware partners to make sure the updates roll out.
Hi, I'm John Blossom. I'm a Google TV ambassador. I'm one of the co-leads along with Derek Ross. And we're trying to channel the right information over to Google TV enthusiasts, as well as trying to interface with the developer community. One thing that I'm not 100% clear, in terms of the API toolkit for Google TV that gets dropped on top of Jelly Bean, if you're going, is it the case that this kit will drop on top of any subsequent Android release? In other words, is there still a situation where you have the kernel bundled with the Google TV, or could you do it separately? And the second question that came in from the ambassadors is, where are you on 4K video support?
Okay, let me try to answer both of them. So right now, Google TV uses Android standard platform as is. But in order to make sure it's actually working, all the APIs, underlying changes are in line. Whenever new Android versions, underlying base platform comes out, there will be a release of Google TV libraries works with it, always.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
first answer.
what I hear you saying there, it's somewhat decoupled, but not really. It's really a matter of you maintaining the libraries now in parallel with all the current Android releases. Is that the case?
No, depends on, let's say our libraries are using Android APIs, or depends on some of the APIs. Between the Android releases, if there is absolutely no changes that impacts our library, there is a chance that we don't have to update.
Correct.
But if there are changes, let's say some of the APIs are deprecated and change the packaging from one to the other, then we have to update just to make sure it compiles correctly.
Correct. So manufacturers and developers can keep on overlaying kernel updates and just keep on progressing and not worry about any having to synchronize with the toolkit until it's affected by underlying changes.
That's right.
Will there be any reverse engineering to bring it into previous Android releases, or is it strictly moving forward?
It is safe to say that we always go forward, but it doesn't mean that we have to change the API version every time. Let's say, for example, Android K release come online and we have an API set and we don't have any extra API at that moment, we could keep the exact same APIs. So the libraries may have to be released, but the version level could same as version 2. There are multiple cases possible. We will always minimize the impact.
Do we have any hardware manufacturers lining up to drop this kit on top of a tablet as opposed to a big screen?
We discussed with some of them, but at the moment, there's no committed maker who want to bring that to tablet at the moment. But I wouldn't say that it will be impossible in the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
The second question was 4K video. So 4K support, in terms of the video playback, 4K support is completely relying on the decoder capability. So some of the SoC partners we are working with, their SoC is capable of playing 4K video, as you can see in the TCL case. So some devices in the market will be able to. But the problem is then the display also need to be 4K. It's going to be for device per device. And actually the SoC, underlying SoC is being used by them. Right. For example, our video framework is independent of whether the developer tried to play 4K or not. Yeah. For example,
Andrew, I think maybe if you're interested, you can stop by offline in the sandbox and check out the TCL 4K TV. Let's take more questions.
Just a quick question. You mentioned all the extensions being available in Chrome on Google TV. Are they also available in WebViews?
Current version of Jelly Bean WebView is a different implementation of a browser. So we have a plan, but I cannot actually share any timeline.
So we'll have to punt over to Chrome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, two quick questions. So the first one is, Is there any progress with playing with the actual cable feed, like overlaying on top of it or getting it inside your app on a different level as a view? And the second one is, are we going to see any higher end devices come out for Google TV in the near future, or are they still going to stay on the lower end of the market?
So embedding the video in your application is possible today with the version 4. So their TV player is one of the offering as a part of the Google TV toolkit, add-on libraries and our application. And that binary, basically an application which represents live TV feed, has an API to resize itself to a certain size and location so that you can place on top of it. That's one option. And in our API set, there are a lot of APIs, but we don't talk about all of it here. But once the device rolled out and we published the API, there is an API called Media Device View. And once you instantiate Media Device View, you can actually give a TV URL to that and embed the Media Device View inside of your application. Then you can actually play live TV video inside of your application. That is possible. And then second one was?
Higher end devices?
Yes, there will be high-end devices. But I cannot share the timeline.
Cool.
You mentioned 3 new features I'm trying to reconcile. One was NDK access, but unfortunately I think that means we'll see an increase in malicious applications that might be able to get kernel level access. And then 2, you have closed caption support, which I'm assuming is going to mean I've got to do graphic overlays from, say, a GPU on top of a video stream. All right, then 3 was the trusted video path. How exactly are you going to maintain a trusted video path in that type of environment?
Okay, so in order to understand the security risk, you have to understand how trusted video path is implemented. We are actually using hardware features to protect any process running on the main memory and main CPU to be able to access certain memory zone. So no matter whether the device is rooted, we don't actually allow rooting, but even in the case of rooting or in any malicious code taking over root access, those processes will not have access to the video data.
So you're working with the chip level manufacturers in order to implement that?
That's right. So every SOC partner we have who are certified partner always conform to our requirements.
Thank you.
So I think we're actually running a little bit over our time, but
2 more questions. Then I can ask a question outside.
Well, I think the best is if we probably take questions outside. Just find us outside.
Yep.
We need to clear the room for the next presentation.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.